fact, of your taxpayer dollars, $200 million gets spent every year on veterans and veterans-related benefits, non-VA reimbursable. So that's $200 million a year. To put that in perspective, there are 365,000 veterans in the Commonwealth. And most of them don't get any benefits or services, don't need any benefits or services. So when we talk about that smaller number, we are dedicating a significant amount of resources to those folks, and we want to continue to do more. We want to continue to, more importantly, to do it better. So Bob, for all you do, and I know it's not easy work, Bob's in the trenches. If you are a veteran, if you are, more importantly, even, or just as importantly, a spouse of a veteran or a dependent of a veteran, even if the veteran themselves has passed, you can go down to Bob and you can get access to benefits and services. If you're struggling financially, please come see Bob. If you have access, health care access, even if you're a dependent, you don't think you're eligible for VA, come see Bob, come get access, see if we can get, if there's a benefit or a service, have him take an application and see what we can do for you. It's vitally important that you do that. The other thing I want to just stress this, I haven't heard this too much in this room, but I hear it all the time when I go to places. I get veterans, heroes of World War II, heroes of Korea, heroes of Vietnam, and they say to me, I don't need anything, save it for the guys that really need it. Hear that all the time. Let me tell you the fallacy in that statement. Our vets benefits, both at the federal and state level, are based on utilization rates. That means if people aren't using them, then the budget people look at that and say, oh, that must not be a needed benefit. We can cut back on that. We don't have to give as much. So when every benefit I give you, you're statutorily entitled to. There's very few benefits where I could say, oops, you were number 54 on the list, we could only afford 53. That doesn't, I got to figure out how to pay for 54 or 154. We have to give you that money. So if you don't use your benefit, you actually put those benefits in being in danger. If you're eligible for something, if you've earned something, I swear to you, it is our privilege, it is our honor to provide that to you. Let us try to help you get access to that benefit. Please don't not take advantage of something because you think you're saving it for someone else. It actually puts the benefit at risk. And that's really where Bob comes in. Please come see Bob if you have any issues or concerns about that. And, Bob can't handle it. He'll buck it up. Evan's here. Evans works in our office. He's a senior guy. He's forgotten more about vets benefits than I'll ever know. And he's a former Army Master Sergeant who is a tanker and a fellow Desert Storm vet who hates taking orders from a corporal every day, but he puts up with it. So thank you, Top, for doing that. The representative talked about a little bit about the Valor Act. I do want to get into that. But if I can, just let me give you just a minute or two to talk a little bit about veterans and veterans data and the challenges that we have right now. Oh, and Senator Kennedy's here as well. I had already mentioned you, Sarah, but thank you for joining us. Senator Kennedy was really rather instrumental in the Valor Act, and especially around the Gold Star family benefits. Some of you might have known Maureen Dunn. Maureen was the wife of Lieutenant Joe Dunn, who went MIA in Vietnam. Was a Navy aviator, and plane was shot down, and they never recovered his body. And Maureen was, and God bless her soul, she passed, but I don't think she mind me telling you, she was a pit bull. She was feisty as heck. And she made sure that those MIA families, and the reason you have an MIA POW flag under the American flag on a lot of places is because of Maureen. And she didn't stop there. She made sure we got benefits and services to our Gold Star families. And she was a good friend of Tom's, the senators, and the senator really was instrumental in getting some of that passed. Thank you very much, sir, for doing that. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're facing right now in veterans and the challenges we're facing. And the opportunities, more importantly, that we're facing. Our vets population, despite what you hear in the general public, people say, oh, how can we afford to, we can't care for the millions and millions of new vets that are going to come into our system because they'll overwhelm the system. And the fact is, that's just not true. Not that they won't overwhelm the system, but there aren't millions and millions of new vets coming back. There are 365,000 approximate vets in the Commonwealth today. 73% of our veterans are over the age of 55 years old. Half of our veterans are Vietnam or Vietnam-era vets with an average age of 66 years old. From 1941 to 1946, we had 1 million, mostly men, come back to Massachusetts from World War II as veterans. And that's really the system that was set up. Our system, especially our federal system, was our VA system was a post-World War II system. It was established before then, but it was really made robust in the post-World War II era to account for those millions and millions, those 20 million veterans coming back to America, and the million coming back to Massachusetts. Well, in just over 13 years from 9/11, 2001 until today, the number of new vets in the Commonwealth from Iraq and Afghanistan represent maybe 46,000. Maybe 46,000. Most of our Iraq and Afghanistan vets are not active duty. They're deployed reservists and National Guard members. Of the 9,000 Massachusetts National Guard members that we have on duty today, approximately 6,000 of them have done a deployment in Iraq, Afghanistan, or elsewhere in support of either Operation Noble Eagle or elsewhere in the world in support of the mission. And those folks have done multiple deployments. We talked about a gentleman earlier today about the effect that has. That's how we conduct wars nowadays. We don't have a draft. We have a reliance on our Guard and Reserve, and some would say an over-reliance, where we deploy them multiple times. I know this is different. I talked to Vietnam vets, and the National Guard had a very different connotation when people were going to Vietnam. But I can tell you this today: if you meet a National Guard member, a Mass Guard member, or a Guard member from any of the other states, the odds are that person's deployed once or twice. They've left their family, they've left their jobs, they've suffered financial hardship, they've been in danger. We've had killed in actions. We've had people who've come back with severe post-traumatic stress and other injuries. So really, on behalf of us, really thank those National Guard members. They are doing a tremendous amount for this Commonwealth. But as that number, so in general, as that number that we have, that 365, with the over 73% being 55 years old or older, we look at that, over the next 15 to 20 years, that number unfortunately decreases. In fact, by 2036, we'll have half as many vets as we have today. We'll have our number. And at 160,000, 165,000 vets, most of whom will still be Vietnam or Vietnam-era vets, only now instead of the average age of 66, they'll be 86. That's really the challenge. How do we get those folks into services and benefits and continue to meet our promise to our World War II, our Korean War vets, and our Vietnam War vets, and our Desert Storm vets, at the same time while being innovative and creative about how we meet the needs for our Iraq and Afghanistan vets. Iraq and Afghanistan vets are very different than any other generation. To begin with, they deploy, again, out of the Guard and Reserve. They do multiple deployments. They're fighting in 2 different zones. They're part of America's longest-serving war. They are far better educated than any other generation of veterans that you have previous to that. I know we've all heard the old stories. You know, people said, how'd you get in the Marine Corps? How'd you get in the Navy? Well, the judge said a year in jail or, 4 years in the Marine Corps, pick. That doesn't happen anymore. It is extremely competitive to get into our military services, any branch. We routinely have to write letters of recommendation for folks trying to get in because they can't get in. And these are not kids with bad Corys or jail time or anything else. They're just, they're not scoring high enough on their entry exams. It is very, very competitive to get in. And as a result, we have a very qualified and professionalized military service. I had a Navy ship come in here 2 years ago. I was talking to the captain. He told me the changes that he'd seen in Navy service over the course of his time. That his young sailors, when he first came in, anyone below the rate of E5, was unheard of that they would even have an associate's, much less a college course under their belt. If they had a bachelor's degree, the thinking is if you had a bachelor's degree, you'd be an officer. Well, out of his ship, out of the sailors on his ship, out of his E5s or below, 60% had an associate's degree. 20% had their bachelor's. Of his non-commissioned officers, E5 and above, most of them had their bachelor's, and out of his senior chiefs, there was a PhD. So this is a very professionalized service. This is not this is not for everyone. And as a result, they're coming back, and these are very highly educated folks who are used to getting information, services, and benefits and resources in a very different manner than the folks coming from them before. And you know, we've got some folks. Brad is here from our team, from our SAVE team. They're doing peer outreach to these folks at the local level, and we see it in them all the time. I mean, they say, you ask them, you know, do you want to go to VA? No, I don't want to go to VA. Why not? That's where, you know, I don't want to go to VA. I want to be treated in my community. I want to go to the same doctor as my wife goes to and my kids go to. Where do you want to get, you know, do you want to get your benefits? Come down to the office in Boston. No, I'm not going to a government office. You want to give me my benefits? Meet me at the Dunkin' Donuts down the street. We'll talk about it. And what do? We have to go to the Dunkin' Donuts down the street. And that's what this team does out there every day. And they talk about the benefits and services. We'll send you a letter in the mail. I don't read paper mail. If you're under the age of 35 years old, you do not open. Somebody sends you this, it goes right. It could be a check for $1 million. It goes right in the thing. My entire life is based online. I bank, I date, I live. Everything is based on a computer. I do not open paper mail. Do not send me paper mail. I will not read it. And that's the challenge we have to face, because for a lot of our veterans, they work, you know, like us, paper mail, phone calls, that's how we did business. And for our new vets coming back, they want no part of it whatsoever. So we need to have almost two different systems operating at the same time in order to meet our mission. As that number decreases and those vets become more prevalent, and, you know, and our Vietnam vets begin to move into a category where they're looking for additional services and resources, folks like Bob are going to become even more critical. We've all seen stories about the VA in the news over the last year. VA has its challenges. I'll be the first one to tell you that. It's a big federal bureaucracy. It doesn't serve the majority of veterans. Most of our veterans receive health care on the outside, even those that are VA eligible go to private care. It is difficult to make changes within VA, and essentially the new secretary, and I'll be meeting with him next week. Secretary Bob McDonald's coming to Boston, and he'll be the first one to tell you I'm in charge of tens of thousands of people, $1 trillion worth of health care. And there's only 3 people in this organization that I can hire or fire based on how we've structured it. So it makes it very, very difficult to reform VA. But they are working really hard at it. Bob, Secretary McDonald comes from outside of VA. So West Point grad, was at Procter & Gamble for a long time. He is very committed to getting this system back and running. And look, I use VA healthcare for some stuff. I use private healthcare for other things. I've had great experiences at VA. I've had less than great experiences at VA. I can tell you this, if you have a less than great experience, tell Bob, let us know. We'll put you in touch with the right people to talk to at VA. We want to make sure that gets taken care of. On the benefit side, VA benefits, anybody who served in the military, you think you have a disability that was aggravated or caused by your military service, please see Bob. We need to get you on track for a service-connected disability rating. That is critical. And there's all sorts of other conditions as well. Anyone serve at Camp Lejeune? Any Marines in here serve at Camp Lejeune before 1987? There are certain health conditions. Camp Lejeune water supply was contaminated. TCE and lots of other things. There are certain health conditions that if you have, they're going to connect them in many cases to your service at Camp Lejeune. And that's just one example of a number of other things that are going on. We have conditions with Air Force veterans who didn't deploy overseas but work with nuclear weapons over here, coming down with radiologically connected diseases. We have example of Navy veterans. Some of you worked around asbestos and beryllium in those Navy yards or on their ships. We want to make sure you get those benefits, services. We want to, more importantly, beyond the check, we want to get you the right health care. We want to get you access to something that's going to get you, going to make sure you maintain your health. So please come see Bob, come see us. I know we have a representative from the Legion here, sir, vet service officer from American Legion who can help as well. The American Legion, DAV, places like that can take claims as well. Please get down, see what you're eligible for, and see if there's some way we can help you. Finally, we get to Valor Act. One of the things that we were able to do, again, through the good work of the senator and the representative, and as well as some others we have in the State House, was to be able to reform a lot of our vet service laws, and a lot of them had needed some help. Under Valor Act 1 and Valor Act 2, we did a number of key reforms. Primarily, number one is we went to a certification and testing for all our vet service officers. So for every one of the Bobs that, that we have, some are in districts, there's 351 cities and towns, about 255 vet service officers in Massachusetts. But up until this recent legislation, they didn't have to be, I had to provide training, they didn't have to attend. And there was no certification, there was no qualification, other than being a veteran, there was no other qualification for, were you held accountable? Did you know what you needed to know? And as a result, you can imagine quality varied. Some had great access to a great vet service officer. Here in the South Shore, we've been pretty strong. Mr. McPhillips over in Pembroke, and Tony over in Rockland, and Roxanne in Plymouth. But some communities hadn't embraced the position as vigorously as we'd like. Some vet service officers weren't as well trained as we'd like. So that's going to change. Starting this year, they'll be taking exams. They'll have to pass a working knowledge of Chapter 115. They'll have to demonstrate that they're eligible to take and advocate for VA claims. And they'll also have to have a working knowledge of and some training in suicide prevention, as well as how to recognize someone suffering from post-traumatic stress and other readjustment issues. And we'll be certifying them on a regular basis. And it won't just be the vet service officer that's certified, the community will have to be certified as well. So the office will have to comply with all laws under Mass General Law, Chapter 115. That's a huge step. It's going to help us to ensure that a veteran, no matter they walk into a vet service office in Pittsfield or in Provincetown or anywhere in between, they get access to the same great level of benefits and services that they're eligible for. Number two, Valor Act worked with Gold Star supports and tax abatements. If you're a disabled, if you're disabled veteran, you are eligible for a tax abatement if you're over what, 30%? 30%, Evan? 10%, sorry. 10% you're eligible, and that's a prorated system going up to 100%. So if you have that rating, if you don't have that rating, you get that rating. Come in, see the assessor, and let's get your tax abatement. For our Gold Star families, you are eligible. We are working on the definition of Gold Star, but essentially, our definition of a Gold Star family right now for the benefits and services we run, and now we've brought the registry onto this definition as well, is anyone who passes well on active duty. It does not have to be in a combat zone. It does not have to be killed in action. You have to simply pass while you're on an active duty capacity, and we're going to give you Gold Star status. The DOD gives you Gold Star status right now, and as far as the Gold Star mothers and the Gold Star wives, they're federally chartered, congressionally chartered organizations. That is their definition of a Gold Star family member. So we're following the definition established by our Gold Star families. We're going to get you some benefits and services as well. As far as 100% service-connected disabled folks, we have an annuity. We're the only state in the nation that has an annuity. Please take advantage of that. It's $2,000 a year, tax-free. It's the simplest thing to fill out. We have a welcome home bonus that we've been doing since World War II. I still get applications for World War II welcome home bonuses. I get applications for Korean bonuses. I get applications for Vietnam bonuses. I get applications for Desert Storm bonuses. And we have one of the most generous welcome home bonuses for Iraq and Afghanistan vets. In fact, we do multiple bonuses for multiple deployments for those folks. So if you never got a welcome home bonus and you enlisted or commissioned as a resident of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, please see your vet service officer. We'll get the application. We'll try and see what the story is, if you got paid, and if you didn't, we want to get you paid. As far as academic benefits, I'm not quite sure how many folks here are taking advantage, but there's some great academic benefits, vocational rehab through the VA, the GI Bill. Some of you took advantage of GI Bill when you came back. The post-9/11 GI Bill is very similar to the GI Bill that existed up until the Vietnam War, where it's almost a full college scholarship for a lot of these folks with some living allowances and some additional monies. We standardized the University of Massachusetts system under the Valor Act to ensure that when veterans come in, that they're treated equally at no matter which college or university they go to. And before, veterans would somehow go in and they'd get, some credits or some things at one university at, say at UMass Dartmouth, and then transfer to UMass Boston. And they'd say, oh, we don't follow the rules as UMass Dartmouth. We're going to give you different treatment and give you different services and take different credits. No, we've kind of eliminated that. We want to cut down on the bureaucratic nightmare and the headaches for our veterans. So that should be standardized. And under the new federal law, in order to receive education dollars, we treat all veterans, regardless of whether they live in Massachusetts, as not for in-state tuition rates. So veterans that come here will get in-state tuition rates, regardless of, they've been in Massachusetts for 2 hours or 20 years, and we'll make sure they get supported and cared for on each of the campuses. We've done some stuff with veterans employment, and particularly around veteran-owned businesses. So we now have a 5% set-aside goal for veteran-owned businesses. If you are a service-connected disabled veteran and you own your business and you're interested in state contracts, please, we'll give you the website, see Bob. We have 5% set aside for those folks to get service-connected businesses on all state contracts, and we want to make sure you get eligible. So if you know veterans that own their own business and they're interested in doing business with the state, state spends a lot of money every year, and we do a lot of outside contracting. And personally, I'd like to see as much money as that possible going to our local communities, and particularly to our veteran-owned businesses. So please contact us, and we'll make sure you get access to those as well. Professional fee waivers. If you're a new veteran, you come back, we're going to waive fees for applying for professional licensees for things like tradesmen, plumbers, craftsmen, nursing, medical professionals, x-ray technicians, EMTs especially. One of the things we did under the Valor Act is we required Department of Public Health and some other agencies to accept divisional licensure, to accept your military training as prior work history. So, we don't take someone who's been a Navy corpsman out in Afghanistan for a year and, been doing a lot of hard and dangerous work. And in the past, they'd come back and the state say, we don't recognize any of your military stuff. We're going to put you in to the same class as somebody that's never been in an ambulance in their life. That's very frustrating for our veterans. We've revamped that system, again, thanks to the Valor Act, and now we're getting those folks into jobs and different areas. There are about 1,000 other benefits I could bore you with here all day. Suffice to say, there's so many resources and so many benefits. Please utilize Bob, utilize our office, utilize Evan as a sounding board to try and get access to things if you think you're eligible, or you have a need in your life and you want to see if you're eligible for something. Might be helpful if I take some questions, if people have any comments, rather than me just talking to you. And again, if we're not doing something, please let us know. Please let us know. We want to fix it. We've fixed a lot over the past 7 years, and we know we got a little ways to go. We don't have a perfect system yet, but we're trying to get to as close to perfect as possible. The only way I know that is if you tell me it's working or not out in the field. So I appreciate you guys having me here, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Don't be shy. Do you got any questions? Linda?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see the hand here.
I was just going to say, do you find the current legislature sympathetic toward veterans issues?
Oh, we do. Absolutely. Veterans issues tend to be one of those bipartisan issues people can agree with, but, it's what we find here in Massachusetts that I find is different in other states. I won't name any of my fellow New England states, but there are some who, when they say they support veterans issues, means they debated and passed a resolution to make a certain day, veterans, so-and-so Veterans Day in this particular location, or they'll tell you that they allocated, $300 to buy new flags for the State House or something like that in honor of our vets. Those aren't benefits. Those are symbols of appreciation, but they're not what our veterans need. What our veterans need are benefits and services, and those benefits and services cost money. And I can tell you we're one of the few agencies that has not only not had cuts over the past 7 years, we've seen increases to our budget, which is unheard of. And it's a testament, not only the governor, but to the legislature to be able to do that. We also have a veterans presence, which is great in the legislature. So Mike Rush, who's the Senate chair of the Veterans Committee, was a deployed Iraq veteran, still in the Navy Reserve. He's a Navy officer, an intelligence officer. The former House chair, Hank Naughton, is an Army JAG. He's done a tour in Iraq and Afghanistan. Representative Paracella from Salem was elected, and I think 2 weeks later deployed to Iraq for a year. And he's come back, and he serves on there. Linda Dean Campbell, Rep. Campbell from Haverhill, was a woman veteran in the Air Guard, and did some deployment. She's married to a veteran herself, and she really advocates. And I should say something on the women vets, too. I'm not sure how many women vets are here. Women vets are the fastest growing segment of our vets population. Fastest growing segment. And there's the old, the days of the wax and the waves, God bless them, they broke that glass ceiling, and they did some fantastic work. But women today in the military, there's very few MOSs or duties that they're not eligible to serve in. Very few. We see women vets all the time with Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars. I've met 2 women vets with Silver Stars. There's a significant amount going on with our women veterans, and we're proud to serve them. And really, as we have a strong women's veterans network. If you're not a member, please, if you know a woman vet, please encourage them to join, because there's benefits and services that they're eligible for. But we see strong support for our women vets at the legislature, and again, we see, we just see really, really good, tight support at all levels. It's been really, makes our life a lot easier. Yes, sir.
Do you know if they're going to expand the list for causes of diseases or illnesses?
For Vietnam? Yeah, so there's 13 presumptive conditions right now.
They're going to expand that?
Yeah, they're looking at it. I mean, I'll tell you what they're, I don't control that, but I'll give you what I know about it, and I would encourage them to expand it. We see a lot more illnesses and diseases that, other medical professionals tell us can directly be related to exposure to Agent Orange. So the gentleman's question is basically, there's about 13 conditions that if you have this ailment or this illness and you served in Vietnam, the VA sort of makes an automatic connection that there's some exposure to Agent Orange is attributable to it, and it helps you to get access to benefits and services. When Secretary Shinseki did that, and he did the right thing by doing it, but that was a major contributor to the VA backlog. You heard about claims taking 3 years. Because all those veterans kind of came flooding in. I mean, Evan sees a lot of those VA claims. Bob, I'm sure you did as well. That really overwhelmed the system. And I think they're cautious about that now. So I don't necessarily know if, I don't think they're going to do it until they get the claims process under control, which is a lot better today than it was 3 years ago, but still needs a little bit of work. But maybe within the next year or so, once they have that kind of done, I think they're going to, Secretary McDonald's going to look at it. But I will tell you this, sir, I'm going to see the Secretary next week. I'll ask him that question and find out. And I'll get it back to you, Bob. You can put the word out. No?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Explain to me the difference of how they determine the percentage rate. Like, you get 10% for malaria, and you get 50% for PTSD. The 10% for malaria goes away, and you get 50%. What happens to that 10%? Follow me?
So you get so Evan, help me out here. You get 10% for malaria. Then
I cannot explain it to you other than I can tell you that's VA math. Veterans Administration's calculations. Is what they do is they'll take your 50% and they'll take the 10% and they'll look at it's a very detailed and I really couldn't. I'd have to sit on a table and try to explain it to you. But it's very, out in the field, we call it VA math because logically you have 50 and 10. That's 60%.
Right.
Exactly. Right. And then you come back and you're getting 50% and you're going, what? Yeah. We call it VA math.
But but here's what we will do. So if you get that situation, you feel like you're underrated, yeah, let's file a fully developed claim and an appeal, and see if we can revisit it for you. Yeah. and let's advocate for you. And the sooner you file, the better, because if you keep up with your paperwork, generally, if they determine they underrated you, they'll bring you back to the day you filed. So you get retro check. So don't, yeah, I know, use Bob and some of the vet service offices, or again, you can use the Legion or DAV, it's up to you. I think we do a very good job. We process the second highest number of vet claims in VA, but you can use whoever you want. But I would suggest using someone. That I would suggest. Please don't try to navigate VA benefits on your own. If you think VA math is crazy, the rest of the system will really drive you crazy. Have a professional in your corner to do that.
If I may.
Sure.
We have a representative at the JFK building in Boston, Commonwealth, Massachusetts.
I got
Government
VA
service,
representative.
Okay?
Yeah.
Wealth of information, wealth of service. Now, by the same token, we can sit down and talk to you. By the same token, you can make an appointment to go and sit with them. And they will work through your adjudication there and best explain if it comes out, hey, maybe he's entitled to it, they will assist you and they will follow the paperwork for you.
I do want to take a question, and I'll remain here, but Senator Kennedy, did you want to say a few words? I don't know if you wanted to, and I know what your schedule is like, and I wanted to. Okay, sure, no problem. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I know that in our last meeting, some personal thing, because I'm very involved with someone that came back and has Agent Orange. But I think he will not file for any benefits because he was on the police force. And is there any statement to that, he's on a job and if he has this type of condition, is it stigmatism that he might not be able to work?
So the answer by law is no. You can only get, and now, by law, you can't get dinged on the police force or taken out of your job because you filed a claim. I mean, the only thing that should dictate whether or not you can be a great first responder is whether or not you can actually do the job. If your disability becomes such that you can't drive, or something happens that you can't actually do your job, then they'll talk about it. But filing a claim should not affect you. When I first took over the job, I started to go to different centers. This is like 7 years ago, and I went to a center in Marlboro. And at the time, I was living in Cohasset, and the gentleman who ran the center was it was a non-VA. We got about 30 non-VA providers throughout the state that do things like counseling and things like that for vets. And the provider in Marlboro said, "Oh, you live in Cohasset?" He said, "I see a lot of my vets from Cohasset and Hingham and Rockland." And I thought to myself, that's terrible. We make these guys drive all the way up to Marlboro. Why don't we have a center in the South Shore? He said, "No, we have centers in the South Shore, but they don't want to be seen going into those centers. So they drive out to Marlboro to get their counseling." And he said, "None of my vets in this area, particularly the police and the fire, will come in here. They'll drive 45 miles to go somewhere else." And we kind of laughed about it at the time, but it's really not a laughing matter. It perpetuates the stigma that seeking help or treatment is somehow a weakness, or the old stigma that these veterans come back and they're broken and they have no self-control, or they have mental issues that are going to prohibit them from being productive members of society. It's patently untrue. To begin with, number one, of all the veterans coming back, the vast majority coming back do not have post-traumatic stress. They might have some readjustment issues. You serve a year in a combat zone, you come back to a country where less than 1% of the country is actually even in the military, much less deployed. Yeah, you're going to have a little bit of adjustment issue trying to learn how to be a civilian again and reconcile with the fact that the vast majority of the people don't have an understanding of where you've been. Yeah, that's fine. But most people do not have post-traumatic stress. And the other thing, too, is even the people that do, and there's a number of us with post-traumatic stress diagnoses, it's nothing that impacts your ability to do your job. In fact, I've met police officers who tell me their post-traumatic stress helps them in their job. I met a police officer who told me, he said, my hypervigilance and the things that I dealt with from Vietnam made me a better police officer. Messed up my private life, because I didn't get treatment for them, but the actual stress actually helped me in my professional career. So I would caution against people, and if you have first responders that are seeking that kind of help, please let us know. We'll get Brad or someone, a peer outreach counselor, to talk to them and get them into services that they're comfortable with. And if not, and more importantly, whether it be administrators or chiefs of police or chiefs of fire or chiefs of EMS, we want to educate those folks to know the reality of what readjustment and post-traumatic stress is versus the myth. Yes, ma'am.
I was gonna say, if anything, they might be more protected nowadays once you get that diagnosis of PTSD. Because again, legally, you're almost like a protected class if you're disabled or have a mental health issue. If someone fired you because of that or didn't hire you, you have a lawsuit. Of course, they could find some other excuse and say, oh, it had nothing to do with the PTSD, and kind of discriminate in some other way. But like, as a mother, I think of it as like women who get pregnant, 30 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, you could lose your job more easily if you got pregnant. Nowadays, my jobs, they couldn't touch me when I was pregnant because I'd have a lawsuit.
That's right. It's true. There's a lot more legal protections. I think there's still a stigma, though. People feel like if they admitted it, especially for a lot of our younger vets coming back, they don't go seek treatment because they want to get on the police or fire. Those are great jobs, and they want to do that, and they feel like if I go seek treatment, they'll find out and they won't hire me. That's not true, and it shouldn't happen. And if it does happen, we want to come down on those people pretty quick. The only reason you shouldn't be a policeman or a fireman or an EMT is because you can't do the job. But if you can do the job and you served your country and you pass the civil service exam and you get a high enough score with your preferences and the service that you had, you should be able to go ahead and do it.
He was on the police department before he was deployed, and he's been deployed twice, but I believe that he's come back with volunteers, because when he came back, he walked down the stairs and just passed out. But he didn't go back to the police station, I think, until he got cleared of everything. But I got very much to do with fire.
Tell you what, see Brad, can you raise your hand, Brad? Can you give him the information, see if there's some way you guys can connect afterwards? That'd be great. Yes, sir.
I don't think this is out of line, but I recently read the federal act by the VA, so the mark the same date as this act. They believe it to be called over slavery or the whole federal law.
Yeah, the VA reform.
The VA,
Yep.
let's call it that. I'm wondering if you could give us, perhaps another meeting down the road, whatever, and explain this mileage to and from emergency situations. This is pretty tough language for the average veteran or their spouses or caretakers to understand.
No, absolutely. I'd be happy to come back. I'd be happy to come back and bring VA representatives too, who could really answer specifically what is different now. I mean, I know in a nutshell, some of the big changes to VA are if you're waiting longer than 90 days for an appointment, you have a right to have that appointment at a private physician. So, you can go to the doc down the street and tell VA, and they'll tell them you want a private contractor, and they'll give you a doc in your neighborhood. If you're waiting more than 90 days, they've changed the mileage. They've also changed the emergency room stuff because that was crazy. They were,
That is the problem with that
yeah.
ID cards, whether or not the firefighters will accept them because it's a state law, but they take you
To the nearest. Yeah.
closest to them for stabilization, which eliminates any VA hospital in our area.
I had a young vet that worked for me who was playing softball. He got hit with the softball in the head, and he was kind of somewhat unconscious. And they called an ambulance, put him in the back of the ambulance. And the ambulance, at the time he was in Dedham, they took him to Norwood Hospital. And Norwood Hospital brought him in and treated him. And by the time he came to, they said, he said, well, where am I? He said, I'm in Norwood Hospital. And he said, well, they asked him for his insurance. He said, well, I'm a VA patient. And, you know, the short of the story is VA had said, oh, you should have come here, we're not gonna pay that bill. And this young, you know, was underemployed 24-year-old veteran, all of a sudden had a $17,000 bill that had no idea how he was gonna pay it. So, I think this act really did kind of tighten that up a little bit. You know, it's difficult to try to get to VA. VA is very reluctant to contract with certain services, particularly on emergency room stuff. But I think the act actually does it better. And I would be willing to come down and have some VA folks come down and explain how this has changed. Sure. Senator Representative, if you'd be willing to do this again, I'll be happy to get the people. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us a little bit about the aid and attendance benefit for, does that fall under you? For vets who need like assistance with activities of daily living?
Aid and
Like
attendance
maybe
does,
home care
yeah.
or have to go live at assisted
Sure.
living?
applying for aid and attendance, we can do. We don't actually provide the benefit. So we, you know, if you put it this way, if someone qualifies for aid and attendance, chances are they will qualify for Chapter 115. So we, in the short term, they should go see Bob, and we can get them some money and cover medical expenses while we apply. Evan, do you want to talk a little bit about aid and attendance?
I'm going to really simplify this because it's one of the most detailed applications to submit. Correct? Correct, it is. To simplify the matter, one, they have to be a wartime veteran or a widow of a wartime veteran. That's one of the requirements. And second, they would have to be, again, they have to meet the ADLs and be totally and permanently disabled. Once they meet those two criteria, and they are actually paying out of their money that they're receiving, whatever retirement, whatever, the VA looks at it as a medical expenditure. So what they do is to briefly summarize this, they'll take all the money that you're actually paying for those medical expenditures and subtract it from your income. So they give you your income now becomes zero. Okay? So once you have no income, the VA then gives you an allowance, which is called a VA non-service connected pension. And that pension currently is $1,054 a month. So they're going to give you that, plus they're going to give you an allowance on top of that for meeting for your ADLs. An additional, like, I'm going to say like $600 a month. So altogether, the money that you're making, that you're spending towards your assisted living, will now become zero, and the VA will give you an additional $1,700 a month. That's really, in a nutshell, how it works.
So I can make a point here, Evan?
Yep, absolutely.
Taking the two systems, we can take care of you faster than the VA. Just as easy as that.
Right. We will definitely assist you through the process until the VA will finally adjudicate the claim. All of those types of claims go to Philadelphia, and the approximate time, I'm going to give you about a year. But the good thing is, it's a good thing. The good thing is the VA will go back to retro the date of the application. So if you submit it in January and they award you in December, they will give you a whole year worth of payments that you've been waiting for.
But in the interim, go see Bob or your vet service officer. Get payments from the city or town. We reimburse the city and towns 75% of those, so they can get access to, we don't want anybody to, we never want to be in a position where we tell someone it's going to be a year and we don't have any solution for you.
So that's from Chapter 115?
The city and town money, correct. While you're waiting for the aid and attendance.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because I work for an assisted living, and we had seniors who, while they were waiting for their aid and attendance money, they've like taken out I think they're elder life loans, but if they don't have to take out a loan.
Reverse mortgages, things like that.
Yeah, if they don't have to do that and can go right to the town, I want to know so we can direct them.
If their income is under, if for an individual it's about $1,800,
1900.
1,900? So if you're an individual, you have less than 1,900 coming in income, or a couple is about 2,500 a month. We're not gonna count your house. We don't count a primary residence, I'm sorry. Can't, vacation homes and all that would probably dig you off, but we're not gonna count, your vehicle. If it's a primary vehicle,
Okay.
and you have to have, we're looking at this number, it's about 3,000 right now, but we're looking at increasing it to something in cash assets in the bank. If you have less than that, then Bob's gonna be cutting you a check.
If you could see me after the presentations, that'd be more than happy to talk.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
At least till we get you, figure out what the best federal benefit is we can get you.
Right, because there's so many people who need help and they don't even know they're eligible or how to access it. So again, I want to be able to be a resource.
Great.
So, thank you.
We have books here as well, on our state benefits. We have 2 great websites. For those of you comfortable with dealing, it took me a while to get used to doing everything online myself, but massvetsadvisor.org, there should be some cards here for that, and mass.gov/veterans has all of our benefits and services. It's pretty easy to navigate, so.
Thank you.
Senator, it's your turn. Sure.
This is not just for cable, actually, this is just gonna project.
Did you hear me all right in cable? First of all, I want to thank the good secretary. As you can see, we have great fortune of having a man of his caliber and his qualifications serving as the head of our Veterans Agency. He is a man of great knowledge and great compassion. And those 2 qualities result in the best type of service that the government can extend to the veterans. My mother lived to be 101 years old and died just a few years ago. So I have a strong affection for seniors for obvious reasons. But nothing is more sacred and holds our attention and our support up in the State House by legislators like the good rep you have here, George Cutler, and myself, than veterans and their families. Because the debt that we owe those men and women is beyond compare. These liberties and freedoms that we enjoy and that we salute every day when we see our flag is so oftentimes overlooked and minimized. But the red in that flag is for the blood that was shed, the blue for the battle, and the white for the purity of heart for our veterans when they entered into military service. So I thank you for allowing me to be part of this. Josh was the mover and the shaker that got the secretary here. My experience in the State House, those 30 years, I've never worked with a finer colleague in government, a man with more energy, more drive, and more heart for this job than your state rep. And you're lucky, and I'm lucky to have him. So, obviously, the subject of this afternoon's meeting was very important, because the secretary talked for a great length of time. The questions that you asked were very on the mark, very germane to his expertise. So I'm sure you feel as enriched coming to this afternoon lunch as I do. So, thank you very much. Thank you for your services, you veterans, and thank you for the sacrifice, you families of veterans. So, God bless you, and God bless America.
So we're done, folks. We'll be sticking around. If you want to ask questions individually, feel free to do so. Senator Kenny has a little gift, I guess, for us to share for both of us. So again, thank you all for coming and have a great afternoon.